Jonathan, can you address the lies being told on the case itself and your name?
Regarding the negative propaganda and the lies that are being strewn out, yes, I think people need to know the truth, and whether they'll accept the truth or not, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that the public really is ready to absorb the reality, the vast reality of the cover-up that is going on, not only about my case, but many other cases. But look, we know that the negative propaganda on the internet, including Google, many websites, and just the constant disinformation campaign that's out there, is being presented and propagated by as high up as Department of Defense, groups in the NSA. Some of the negative websites are being paid by government sources to attack people like me, to spread lies, blatant lies, any way they can to discredit the person. And if people look hard enough, they'll see they're not discrediting the evidence, they're discrediting the people, the messengers. Because they know that if they, get the public to look away and create a big enough smoke screen, that nobody will look any farther at the reality of what's going on. The fact that, some of these places are so blatant lies about my name, about my family, about what I've been involved with, about my history, my education, my credentials, that it scares people away. It scares the public away because it presents an absolute statement. Well, if the public looks close enough, if they take the time to look into my case and some of these other people that have been discredited over the years, you can find the truth. You can find that I do have credentials, that I did go to universities, that I did graduate, that there are people who have stood up, presented written testimony, and confirmation that I did in fact go to these universities, that I did graduate, that I did work at a major medical facility in psychiatrics. The proof is out there, but whether the public will take the time to look beyond the negative smoke screen, that's the real issue. And what I've learned in talking to the public is people either know that things are being covered up or they don't. And those who don't really aren't interested in looking any further. They don't care about the people involved. They care about the negative press, and once they see that, they look elsewhere. Well, that's exactly the objective, is to keep the public from looking any closer and looking with their own sense of reality, trying to figure out the truth for themselves. The public does not know the whole story. They need to look farther than just Google. They need to look at some of the interviews that have been done over, the last 10 years and see what has actually been proven by a lot of independent researchers, not by my team, but by people who have spent thousands of dollars, including hiring their own private investigators that have gone to the universities where I went to college, where I graduated from, who have gone out on their own directly and talked to the professors and talked to other students that I went to school with. That's what people need to know has happened. And I think for the most part they don't. We live in such a soundbite era where people don't have the time, or they don't take the time to really look into the reality of what's going on. Let's not only look at my case, but let's also look at the hundreds of other cases and issues relating to cover-ups, not only in this country, but in many others. Let's go back as far as Roswell. We know it's been covered up constantly, over and over and over, by the United States military and also by other countries' militaries as well, who are basically in cahoots with the governments to control this information. The Phoenix Lights has constantly been ridiculed as being nothing more than flares in the sky. That you have even government officials and police officials and hundreds of other people still coming out saying that it wasn't flares and that they know specifically that there's a cover-up going on. Okay? Travis Walton, Alex Collier, all these people have been constantly bombarded with negative press, telling the public that it's nothing, it's somebody making up a story. You know, my case is not the only one, but the sad point of this whole thing is how many people need to die before the public starts to see through the cover-ups? You know, only when somebody dies does somebody turn around and say, wow, you know, maybe this guy was telling the truth, or maybe we need to look deeper into it. But before anybody dies, why don't you start talking to the sources? Well, you still have the ability to speak to them. You know, all we've ever asked is to have a little bit of courtesy and a little bit of dignity, and we'll tell you everything we know. We may not have all the answers, because I certainly don't. But I certainly know what's happened to me regarding the last 10 to 14 years in the fact that there is an apparatus, there is a major negative force out there constantly bombarding my people, my friends, my team, and me to suppress what I have to say. Look, if it was just some story I made up or some hoax, you know, I certainly wouldn't be talking about it now. I have much better things to do than try to run around, you know, telling stories. People in the world are the ones who continue to ask me to tell my story. And as long as they do so, I'm more than willing to tell you what I know, what happened to me, and what I've learned since the initial encounter. These encounters continue all the time, not only to me, but to many people all over the world. It's time that people understand something. It's time that the public understands something. I read through the internet, I look through Facebook, and I hear people making comments like, well, when first contact happens, we'll be ready, or we won't be ready. Let me tell you, people, first contact happened thousands of years ago, and it's ongoing every day somewhere around the globe. I'm here to tell you I'm actively involved in contact, and there are thousands of other people who are constantly involved in contact. We're not crazy. We have real information, and we have proof that this is happening. Now, if you don't want to listen to us and bury your head in the sand, that's your choice. But if you want to hear the truth, if you want to know what's really happening, you want to listen to the people who are having contact, not just keep looking at lights in the sky, that some kind of craft is going to land on the White House lawn and present the President of the United States with some kind of plaque for peace. That's not going to happen. If anything, there would be a negative aspect to this, a hugely negative aspect, if that ever happens. But that's not their plan. That's not the idea, and that's not what first contact was. First contact was the reality that we're not alone, that we're not the most intelligent beings in the universe. That reality has long come and gone. We know that that's happened for thousands of years. The public just needs to wake up and see beyond the smokescreen to know that it's happened and start asking more intelligent questions and find out that some of us who are in contact have some of these answers. We have those answers now. You know? But the people who are being beaten up, like myself, by some of these faction groups of negative publicity, negative propaganda, that's where the public should be looking and listening the most. Because if we aren't, if the story doesn't matter, if we aren't of any concern, if it's just some kind of hoax, then why are we being targeted so heavily with this negative propaganda? I haven't been publicly speaking for 6 years. I've only been privately speaking to private groups, private universities, private science groups, private government intelligence groups. I have not been speaking to the public other than on a radio program or a television program occasionally. But the point I'm trying to make is if I'm not of concern, why is the smokescreen so heavy to keep the public from looking any closer at my case or people like me? And I think the point I have to say to you, and you talking to me about this, is that there's issues here that are far more important than the messenger, the me. The issue is, what is this contact all about? And what can we learn from the people who are continually having it? Because there's a lot of information that people can learn. They can discern a great deal from what we now know. And I think that people need to start asking those questions. Instead of the people behind the scenes, the governments, the military intelligence of some of these governments that are actually hiring me as a consultant to come and speak to them. What about the public? The public needs to wake up. They need to splash some water in their face and realize that contact is here. We are in contact. The governments are in contact. There is a huge amount of information that can be gathered if people would just start listening with different ears. I mean, the truth is, and I'm not even sure if the public is ready to receive the information. Because so far, by most of the comments, that I get and I see and I read all the time, I'm not sure that the public is really at the point where they can truly understand the reality of this all. The reality is there is an evolution happening of information, of spiritual guidance, and of humanity that's going on. And that's what I'm not sure that the public is really ready to accept. The fact that we are being changed, that we are part of them and they are part of us. I don't think the public is completely ready to accept that. I think that shatters a great deal of the foundation that we have always in the past believed that humanity was based on. Well, it's day one, people. We need to start over and start learning from a new primer that life on this planet is not just about humankind. It's about all life. And not only all life on this planet, but all life in the universe. And until we find that ability to look in that scope and be humbled by the fact that there's a much greater intelligence interacting with mankind, until we're ready to accept that, I'm not sure the public is ready to understand the reality that's behind contact itself. Again, how many people need to die before the public starts to see through the definite propaganda, the definite disinformation that's being thrown at people like me and others who have had contact, to keep the public from looking at the reality of what's going on? How many people need to die?